Hey everybody, it's Dr. AnthonyChaffee here with a buddy of mine, Kev Mason, who goes by Keto Kev. He runs a couple keto and carnivore groups on Facebook, Keto for Health and Kev's Carnivore Clan, with a bunch of people trying to optimize their health and do that through the keto diet and carnivore diet. Kevin, thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks very much for having a chat with me today. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So, like we said before, I run a couple of groups, keto groups. It's got a few thousand, it's got about 16,000 people in it. But I like to push the kind of animal-based ketogenic way of, ketogenic diet a little bit more than say other people that like to add a little bit more plants. And the reason why is because, I was carnivore for a long time, I say a long time, about 6 or 8 months. And I researched people like yourself, and others, and what they were saying about the damaging effects that plants can have. And the more I looked into it, the more I cut down on my plant intake because of what these were doing, things like turmeric and garlic and stuff like that. And I was recommending these things to people on keto. And then I ended up opening a carnivore group. It's only got about 450 people in it, but I'm just trying to get a bit more information from other people that are doing carnivore like yourself, so that I can educate more people on different ways of doing things. Because there's the way that you do it yourself, which is just like water, meat and salt, and then there's other people that kind of add a few little more bits into it. So I'm really looking towards kind of what your views are on these other little extra bits, and why is it a good way to go carnivore, really?
Yeah. Well, I think, anytime you're going to be eliminating things off, going ketogenic or carnivore, or anything in between, where you're just consciously cutting out things that are known to be harmful, you're going to make improvements. And so a lot of people can make, stepwise progression and improvements along the way. I find that even little bits of seasonings and so forth affect me. They won't necessarily affect me for that long, but I notice it, maybe 20 minutes or so later. If I'm at a restaurant and they have some seasonings or a sauce on it, and I sort of scrape off most of it, but some of it stays on there. I'll notice, like, in 20 minutes, my face will sort of get itchy, my nose will get stuffy, maybe my asthma sort of kicks up, and I just feel a bit crummy. Not hugely. I don't feel horrible, but I feel different, and I don't feel, perfect and as I normally do. And that bothers me, and it goes away in maybe a couple hours, because it's a very small amount and my body's pretty tuned up. But you can imagine, if you have a little more of that and a little more of that and a little more of that, this sort of builds up, and then your background is feeling a little crummy, and and then you add on to it from there. So that's why I do what I do. Just I don't find it appealing to put any sort of toxin in my body at all, unless I'm getting something for it, like drunk, so, and like, even then, I noticed that, my workouts and my energy levels just don't recover for a full 3 weeks. It's in the 4th week that I start feeling myself again. And from just one night of drinking, and not even getting too wasted. I'm not like, hungover the next day or anything like that. And I feel fine as compared to, my past life when, I was eating normal food, but I don't feel anything close to what I do now. And so it, just to go out drinking, it has to be worth, not feeling my best for a month, for it to be worth it. So as you can imagine, that's not always gonna crop up. So it's like less than once a year. And so if it's like, spices and seasonings and different, pasta, God forbid, that's really not worth it to me. That just doesn't get the bang for the buck that I'm looking for. And so I would just rather feel, fantastic all the time. So that's my main approach, or my main reasoning as to why I do that.
That's quite cool. So like even something small as like spices, I'm the same with gluten. So if we were to have something, for example, if I went to a restaurant and I said, yeah, I'll have the Caesar salad or whatever, apart from the fact that it's got all these, highly processed seed oils and things like that in it that we want to avoid anyway. If it had bread in it, I remember years and years and years ago when I went out with my wife and it came back with bread in it, and she said, oh, I don't really want the bread. And they picked it out of the salad and then brought the same one back to her because we found some bread in the bottom. And I was like, so even that kind of thing would affect my health. And I come out and like, I get itchy, between my legs so badly that I scratch in the night when I'm asleep and it bleeds. So that's how bad I do it. So I totally understand what you're saying. And yeah, like you do want to be like that. And that's so important to feel good, especially, now that now that we're starting to know these things and more research is getting done on, what these things affect our body. Then it's really important for people like, us, like yourself and I, to educate as many people as possible and let them know. And then they can, take their own, do their own route and stuff like that. So that's kind of important as well. A lot of people say it's not sustainable. I mean, I'm teetotal for the last 3 years. In fact, 3 years this weekend it will be. And I would never touch a drop of alcohol again. But mine is not just for my body. Mine is also because it was an emotional thing for me when I was in the army. And when I came out, I had a bit of a dive bomb in my life. So people are saying to me at the moment, like in Keto and Carnivore, they're saying, well, not drinking alcohol is not sustainable for everybody. And I don't understand that because, why is it not?
Yeah.
So if you can give up grains, if you can give up plants, why can't you give up alcohol? And I like your take on it. You have to weigh up those kind of things. So I'm also quite interested in your take on like a few things like, what about dairy? Because we know that dairy can cause inflammation. It's got the A1 casein and the A2 casein depends on cows or goat's cheese that you're having, or cows or goat's dairy. But what's your take on dairy in general? Because I tell people that they should limit it on keto, but avoid it on carnivore.
Yeah. So just to sort of circle back there, like you were saying, it's unsustainable to never drink alcohol. I mean, people do that all the time, and that's like saying, oh, there's no way to go through life without heroin. You just can't possibly live your life completely devoid of heroin. Like, okay,
Exactly.
that sounds like someone who has a serious heroin addiction and is trying to justify that. And same with alcohol and grains and so forth. So of course you can live without it. Is alcohol an essential nutrient all of a sudden? No, of course you don't need to do that.
It's changed.
Yeah. So, that's that sounds like someone trying to cover up their own sort of bad feelings on their own predilections and addictions. As to dairy, yeah, there's stuff that can cause issues for people. Some people don't have a real big problem with dairy, but people with say like autoimmune issues or recovering from that or leaky gut, they'll have much more problems with dairy, and raw dairy is very different than pasteurized dairy, milk, and so forth.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. A1 proteins in milk are inflammatory, and so people try to get the A2, which is better, but it's actually still pro-inflammatory. So you still have these problems. And if you're someone who has issues like the autoimmune people, you're going to see that manifest much more severely. Also, milk. Again, it's just raw milk is just a very different thing to pasteurized milk, homogenized milk. And either way, even with raw milk, it still has enough lactose. If you're ignoring everything else, it has enough lactose in it that you'll jack up your insulin level, which will derail your metabolism. And I'm not worried about being in ketosis, checking my ketones and doing all that sort of stuff. I live naturally. I eat biologically, and so I trust my body to manage itself. I don't need to micromanage it. So whatever my ketones are, they're what they're supposed to be because I'm eating what I'm supposed to. And when you eat dairy, you can it'll have nutrients, it'll have good nutrition. That's fine, but it's not going to have everything. It's not a complete nutrient source like a steak would be, a fatty steak. But in moderation, like if you were using it as a condiment, I don't tell people to strictly avoid that unless they have a problem with it, unless they have problems with it, or they have an autoimmune issue. But melting cheese onto meat is okay. A glass of milk every couple of months, maybe. The problem is that people hear that and they go, "Oh, dairy's fine," and they're just eating blocks of cheese, drinking gallons of milk, and just eating plain yogurt and so forth. I'm very careful to word it just like that whenever I talk to people about dairy, and every single time the only thing they hear is dairy's okay. and then they just they go nuts on it, and it can be addictive, and people run into it. I mean, I love milk. I absolutely love milk. I've always loved milk. It was one of those kids who drank a gallon of milk a day, every
Yeah, me
day.
too.
Yeah. I love this stuff.
That's why you're
Now,
6'3".
what's that?
That's why you're 6'3".
Yeah, well, it could be. Yeah. Like, um, so, now when I have milk, I love it, and it's really hard for me. I'll drink a glass of milk and I'm like, really want another one. But, I try and stop myself. Um, but there is that sort of addiction craving where your body really starts wanting those carbohydrates, because now you've jacked up your insulin, and that suppresses your body's ability to make energy, and you're blocking your leptin and so forth. So you get all these mixed up signals in your head, and now your body's like, drink more milk, drink all the milk. And so I tend to avoid it just for that. I don't, just like, I wouldn't want to start smoking because I really don't want to continue smoking. So why even start? And that's sort of my feelings with dairy as well.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, exactly what you said. Like, when you tell someone that, yeah, you can have it, just have a little bit of it, just don't have too much of it, then they hear what they want to hear.
Mhm.
And it's the same for me when, because people in keto, obviously it's becoming larger in the UK, the keto movement and things like that. People are dieting more, or doing keto more, and then carnivore is coming out more. And it comes, it doesn't come from, it comes from the States, which is where it's been for a longer time. Even though we know where they all came from in the past through evolution and stuff like that, it's like the movement, so to speak,
Yeah.
comes from over there. And there's so many companies all over the world, and they're pushing these products, and it's like, this is keto. And then you look at the ingredients, and then you get the argument that they say, but it doesn't, it's within my macros. I can't listen to that. That's the kind of thing that stresses me. I can't listen to people say it fits my macros, because it's all about the health for me. And peanuts is one for me that absolutely, I can't listen to people saying eat peanuts, because of the lectins, because of the aflatoxins as well. And when you try and explain to someone, yeah, you can have something with peanuts in it once a month or once every 2 or 3 months, they hear
Yeah.
you can have something with peanuts in it. Kev said you can, and that's it. That's where it ends. So that's why, like yourself, I draw that line and say, don't go there. Why
Yeah.
would you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, how good is a peanut? I mean, what's that really adding to your life? You know,
Exactly.
Uh, I just don't
So,
see it. I mean, even things that I would really enjoy the taste of. I enjoy feeling, impeccable much more. I think it was I don't know who said it originally. A lot of people have taken it for their own, but the saying that's like, nothing tastes better than being fit feels.
yeah,
And I completely agree with that. However you want to word it, just that good health is better than anything I've ever eaten, you know?
yeah,
And at the same time, like steak has always been my favorite meal, bar
yeah,
none, since I was a kid. That's always been my favorite. And I was talking to my dad, early on when I was doing this, sort of the first year into it. And I was saying, I was just like, it feels like my birthday every day, because usually on your birthday, you have like the meal that you're not going to feel guilty about. You're going to, spend extra
yeah,
money on. You're just going to have your special day meal, and you're not going to you're not going to feel bad about it. And mine was always a big ass steak with like, butter or béarnaise sauce or something like that. And, some prawns or, whatever. It was always meat. It was always steak.
yeah.
And so now I'm just cooking like an amazing steak every single day. And so every single day just feels like my birthdays. Every day I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I wanted. And, and it's fantastic. So, yeah. And so, do I remember things tasting good? Sure. Did I enjoy various foodstuffs? Absolutely. Do I miss it?
Yeah,
Not in the slightest. I just don't care,
yeah.
because I miss all sorts of things that were enjoyable in the past. Does that mean that they're going to add any value to my life now? No, not really.
No.
So it's really easy for me. It's not as easy for everybody, but I think once you keep going with it and you start thinking around these framing it in these sorts of ways, it gets a lot easier, as opposed to, we were saying, before we came on here, not really liking the term diet, because that adds a sense of that's temporary, and you're going to go on it and then you're going to go off of it. And so, if you're constantly thinking about, oh, I really like that or whatever, and you're not thinking in a way of like, I just want to feel good, I don't need that crap, you're going to be more tempted more often. And if you sort of think of, you sort of think in the back of your head, well, maybe someday I'll have that again. Like you are going to set yourself up for failure. I usually tell people, like, just, they say like, well, I'm going to wait until all my plant stuff, runs out, and then I'll start buying carnivore. I'm like, you'll never go carnivore then, because you're just you're gonna keep buying stuff. You got to strike where the iron's hot. You just got to throw that crap out and just start eating meat, and and really throw the stuff out. Because when you have it in the house, and I've seen my parents do this, I've seen other people do it. If you have it in the house, at some point you're going to mess up and you're going to snack on something. And, my parents said, well, we want to have stuff around in case, family and friends come over, and we're hosting them and so forth. And invariably they will just be going around, and there'll just be some like almonds there. And my dad will just say, oh, almonds. And because he's just so used to, for decades, just if there's almonds there, just sort of snack on them, because that's just what you do. It's easy to do that. And so they were doing that, and it was sort of admiring their progress. It's easy enough to just, get things temporarily and say, hey, this food goes home with you guys, or I'm throwing it out. So, please take it. Or just, you provide meat, and anyone else can bring whatever they want, and they can take it home with them.
Exactly. I mean, you can, that's like hit the nail right on the head there for me, because when I first started changing my way of eating, I went first of all to organic meat, because I looked at how the animals were being treated. And that's how I came off things like KFC and McDonald's and stuff like that. And that's what my wife was pushing. So we went on that, and then we ended up going down the whole rabbit hole of making things yourself, like making your own bread, not going processed. And I would take my own food there. And like what you say, I have to have this in the house just in case there has to be a bottle of wine in the house. I always say, and this is the total flip side, is would a vegan keep a steak or something in their freezer or in their fridge, just in case I popped around? And I know you're just trying to be nice to someone, but you've got to stick with what you believe in your heart. And sadly, if people can't accept you for the way that you are, then that's their loss, not yours. So, I totally see where you're coming from. And when it comes to the whole acceptance thing as well, which leads me on to something that I'm interested about is, what's your take on organ meats then?
Yeah. So, if I can just comment just briefly on that. One was just reminded me of a conversation I had with someone who was trying to sort of introduce carnivore. They were doing carnivore, and they were trying to get their kids to do it as well. The kids were sort of resistant. They were teenagers at this point. And so they're saying, like, they bought some things with, their own money, or they had this stuff, or, oh, well, they don't want to throw it out because other people brought it over and it's a waste. And I was like, okay, well, if someone left a pack of cigarettes here, would you keep it just in case someone wanted to smoke? If your kids, well, my kids bought it, that would be upset at. It's like, okay, do you recognize these things as harmful? Do you recognize sugar as a drug and it's addictive and it causes harm? Yes, I do. Okay. So if you found a bag of cocaine in their room, would you just be, oh, well, they spent money on it, Coke is really, expensive, so I wouldn't want to like throw it out. It's like, no, you dump it down the toilet, and beat their ass. And so, why is this different? We recognize this as a harmful substance. We recognize sugar as a drug, at least I do, and others as well. And so, why are we treating this differently to any other drug that we come across just because it's not illegal? Okay. I mean, there's all sorts of things that aren't illegal that aren't really good for you. So, it's I think of it in that way. And when you start framing it like this and start looking at it like as you would any other sort of illicit substance that you wouldn't want around the house, it starts being like, oh yeah, like, why am I keeping this stuff? Just get rid of this crap.
I did that. Sorry, that. I found my son, he's 15, but a couple of years ago, I found his stash of sweets, and I was like, well, you're not going to enjoy them now when I tip them down the sink or put chili on them and stuff like that. So yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, good. Oh, look, you sometimes you got to, I mean, you control what comes into your house, and maybe you do it
Yeah.
in a slow graduated process, and you just start buying less and less crap and less this and less that, and just sort of more and more meat, and you sort of get them a bit, acclimatized to it, and then pull the rug out. But it's at the end of the day, it's your house, and
Yeah.
they're your kids, and so you can try to educate them and bring them into the fold, and sort of make it be their choice, which will work much better long term, because then when they leave the house, they're also going to be listening to you as well. But it was the same sort of education as you would use with drugs and alcohol and cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. It's like, look, this stuff is really bad for you. It's not good for you. And I know everyone else, thinks it's awesome, but like, it's really not. And you can talk about that. It's obviously, it's sort of, you're swimming upstream with this sort of thing, because most people are saying that it's actually really healthy, but, they also said that
Yeah.
about cigarettes, at one point.
They
So,
did. Yep.
that's not something that we can ignore, and it's not something that we can't change either. As to organ meat, I don't think you need to eat them. If you want to eat them, great, but I think you should listen to your taste. I always tell people, because you go carnivore, and the keto people will recognize this as well to a certain extent, that you have to relearn your hunger signals when you drop carbohydrates and so forth. And certainly when you drop all plants, because lectins can actually bind to your insulin receptors and screw up your hormonal signaling pathways, so that you're just hungry when you shouldn't be, and you retain fat when you shouldn't.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because I've been saying that as well. I've been
Oh
saying
yeah.
that for a long time. Yeah, about
Yeah.
lectins and things like that. So glad you said that.
Yeah, and I noticed that when I just dropped greens, I wasn't specifically doing keto. I just wasn't eating carbs and sugar and so forth. I was just eating some meat and some greens, and then I just dropped spinach, kale, broccoli, and just dropped that, and ate way more calories. I was eating a lot more steak, a lot more fatty steak, and I dropped 10 kilos in a week and a half. Yeah, 10 days, and 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 then went from there, and you just started just shredding fat and stacking on muscle from eating more.
Yeah.
And so and I wasn't eating any carbs. I didn't have any carbs in my diet at the time. So I go by taste. When you do this sort of diet for the first time, certainly you have to relearn your hunger signals. You will not feel hungry to the normal degree. And most people say, oh, I'm just not hungry. I'm just not hungry. I'm not putting on weight because I'm just not hungry. I eat when I'm hungry, but I'm just not hungry. You have to remember that this stuff doesn't affect you the same way, and you're never going to feel hungry like you always have in the past. So you have to relearn these things. If you're feeling a little bit off, you're feeling a bit tired, you feel a bit something, or maybe you're having cravings, maybe you're thinking about pancakes or something like that. You smell some bread and you're like, oh, that's, I wish I could have that. Think about it to yourself and says, is this my brain telling me that I need food, that I need nutrition? And eat meat, and so try it. And if it tastes good, that means that you're hungry and your body wants it. I've noticed that the more hungry you are, the better things taste. That was a famous saying 200 years ago, was the best seasoning is hunger.
Yeah.
Like, things are going to taste a lot better. Even drab things are going to taste amazing when you're starving. And but the converse is true. So when you're full, meat's not going to taste good. It's the same piece of meat, but when you start eating it, it tastes amazing. It's the best thing you've ever had. So every day it's my birthday, I'm like, oh, I love this. And I get to a certain point where I just go, I'm really not enjoying this anymore. I just want to stop. I naturally want to stop. And that's your body telling you that you have enough nutrients, you have enough calories, you have enough nutrition. Cut it out. And so this is natural portion control, which is, some of the detractors say, like, oh, when you're eating these sorts of diets and these elimination diets, you tend to eat less calories, and so you lose weight that way. So just calories in, calories out. Like, okay, A, that's wrong, but B, let's say it's right. Do you not see how significant that is, that your body is naturally limiting your caloric intake, and that your nutrition intake, to exacting degrees, so your body gets exactly what it wants to maintain your body fat percentage and muscle mass to exacting degrees? That is very significant. Most people say, oh, I got to calculate my calories in, calories out, and all that sort of stuff, which is garbage. It's been completely debunked many times over, and people that are still clutching onto this, I just I think they are really misled here. It's not calories in, calories out. First of all, calories affect your body very differently from every different sources. A calorie is not a unit that you're eating. these things, they burn them in beakers and things like that, and they get this amount of energy out, and they say, oh, this is how many calories it has. That's not how your body works. Your body doesn't burn things. That's what we call burning calories, but we don't burn anything. These are complex organic molecules that have very different effects on your body when you eat them. They do very different things, and they interact with other chemicals in a chemical fashion. So it's not as simple as calories in, calories out, because first of all, those calories aren't exactly the amount of energy that you're going to get out of each one of those molecules. So when you relearn that, going by taste, you can just eat what tastes good. And so if organs taste good and that's what your body wants, then I think go ahead. And if you're very nutrient deprived, if you're eating a SAD diet or something like that, standard American diet, standard Western diet, really, then you're probably going to be a bit nutrient deprived, and liver is probably going to be a good idea. But if you're not doing that and you're just eating meat and water, you don't need it. If you want it, go for it. And raw liver for some reason tastes so much better than cooked liver. Oh, it's just insane. It's just a totally different thing. It's like tuna fish from a can, and ahi sashimi. Yeah, it's like it's a different animal. Like, why would you ever cook it? That's horrible.
Exactly. I can't understand
that. Yeah. Like, it just, I think of all the different cans of tuna that I've eaten over the course of my life, and realize that could have been fresh ahi or something like that. I'm like, that's just a crime that was done.
See, I haven't. Animal. I've never eaten tuna. I've eaten it once from a tin, but then apart from eating it sashimi, I won't even touch it. It doesn't smell right. It doesn't taste right. It doesn't feel right. So why would I eat it? It's like it's like people, they jump onto keto, and then they start swapping things around, and they start eating spinach, and I'm like, why are you eating spinach? It doesn't taste nice. It makes your teeth squeak. It's packed full of oxalates, which are super harmful for the body. Why would you eat spinach? Oh, because it makes you strong. It's full of iron. It's not. Shut up, go away.
Does it? Yeah.
So what about things like, because we've established that you're obviously a massive fan of just like salt, water and meat. Do you do all the animals, like all over the animal kingdom? And I was listening yesterday or a couple of days ago to when you mentioned the greatest warriors of all time, the Mongolians, and how amazing they are, and how much horse meat they used to eat as well, which is 100% true. And then they used to drink the blood as well. I also, from time to time, partake in a little bit of blood when I can get my hands on it. But again, I don't force myself to eat these organs and things like that as well. But I eat pretty much, if it's meat, I'm going to eat it. So like I am a person of, I will pick at any kind of animal from the animal kingdom. So I also go hunting. So for deer, boar, pheasant, all that kind of stuff. What about yourself? Is that the same for you, or?
Yeah, definitely. Sort of what I say to people is, anything that moves and had a face, and that's because, some people have problems with shellfish, and so, you eliminate that problem mostly with faces. But, anything that moves and had a parent, had parents or something like that, you can sort of put it that way. I don't have a problem with that. I find that I mostly eat beef just because I prefer it. And, I've sort of been at the sharp end of this for, a number of years. And so because I've only eaten meat, I can actually feel the difference between different kinds of meat. And, I just feel better. Yeah. I feel better on beef than I would on, say, like pork and eggs and fish and things like that. I just feel better. My body I always feel great, but I feel greater when I'm just sticking to beef. And certainly when I add in dairy, I notice it sort of, takes a bit of the edge off. But no, I like all sorts of meat, and, anything that you enjoy eating, have good access to, has a good fat supply, that's right for you, and that you can afford. I think that's fine. There's a lot of people working on different budgets, And, so, if that's your case, chicken and pork, perfectly fine examples. Eggs are great. If you don't have autoimmune issues. Some people with autoimmune issues have difficulties with like egg whites and things like that I've noticed. And actually pork and chicken as well, actually. So I do recommend that if people have autoimmune issues, if they really want to go get the best out of it, just going, just beef and grass-fed beef if they can, but any meat, and just eliminating all that other crap out is going to confer significant benefits to anything else you're going to eat. I was also going to say, you do have to be careful with organ meats because they're pitched, and it is a pitch, it's a sales pitch, saying that they're the most nutritious, they have, the most nutrient dense part of the animal. Yeah, that's true. And that's also a problem, because think about it, you get everything you need from muscle meat. And so these organs have way more vitamins than muscle meat. So what does that mean?
Exactly, yeah.
There's too much, right? If you're eating them regularly. If you just have them every now and then, fine, it's not a big deal. But think about the size of an animal, say a deer, and the size of their liver. How many pounds of muscle meat are you getting to how many pounds of liver? You're getting, it's hundreds to one. And so, if you go hunting and you take down a boar or a stag or something like that, the majority of what you're going to be eating is going to be the skeletal muscle. And so even if you do eat the liver, even if you do eat the offal and so forth, that's going to be a very, very small amount compared to the rest of the animal. And so you have to put this stuff in proportion. And if you don't, you can find yourself getting into trouble. This is some people that gone carnivore, not even that long term. So I don't want to call them long-term carnivores, but for a few years, they're having issues, and now they're saying, oh, well, you need to incorporate carbohydrates back in and all these sorts of things, and now you need carbs, now you need fructose. I don't know, what they're doing, but like I've done this for 10 of the last 20 years. I don't eat honey, I don't eat fruit, I don't do any of that stuff, and my hormones are optimal, and yes, I have checked, my endocrinologist. I've said this before, but my endocrinologist, because he was just, sort of incredulous that, this could be a healthy way of going. But he was, I was telling him about the research, I was telling him about all these sorts of things, and he was really interested. And he's like, oh, that's cool, but let's, let's check all your bloods. He ended up going carnivore himself, and now, encourages that in his patients, because my bloods came back and he said that, if you took 100,000 people my age off the street, that my bloods would be number one without a shadow of a doubt. And that was vitamins, minerals, hormones, everything you do, right? My LDL cholesterol was slightly above, the recommended limits, but from, if anyone's seen my videos on cholesterol, I don't care, because like cholesterol is actually good for you.
Exactly.
And so whatever my cholesterol is, because I'm eating a biologically appropriate diet, it's going to be appropriate. It's going to be physiological, whatever it is, so I don't need to micromanage that. So I've been doing this longer than those people have, and I've never had these problems. But I don't eat organ meat, and they do. And not only do they eat organ meat, they espouse its value and its importance to eat a lot of it, which again, you're not going to get a lot of it out in the wild. You're going to get a small bit of it every now and then. And so I think it's important for people to remember. Real quick, vitamin A, hypervitaminosis A, which you can get from eating too much liver, will suppress your thyroid. And a lot of these guys are getting problems with their thyroid very specifically. And so that is a possible cause. I'm not saying it is the cause. I'm not their doctor. I haven't spoken to them or looked at their labs or anything like that. But this is just something that they talk about. And this is also something that they do. And that is a known side effect of hypervitaminosis A. So, it's something to think about anyway. And if you're going to have liver, if you like it and you enjoy it, fine. I wouldn't eat it every day, and I certainly wouldn't eat it as a mainstay. Just wouldn't do it. We can go to the store and just buy a bunch of liver, but that was never the way. It's not like we were going around, killing a bunch of animals and just eating the liver and going from animal to animal, eating their livers and leaving the rest of it. So
that's what I do. That's what I do. I mean, I look at it as a evolutionary standpoint, and if If we go to a slaughter place or something and we pick up what we want to pick up, then, like I like heart. I think it's quite nice. It's got a nice flavor to it. And a beef heart is huge. So so I would take, like a small slither of the heart from the slaughterhouse. Each time I would go there because I wouldn't also sit and eat a whole heart.
Yeah.
And we would portion it a little bit and say, okay, we would gauge it. I would have a piece about the size of a small steak or a flank steak or something like that. And then, I would eat some liver. 2 or 3 times in the last couple of years, I've had some blood. And most of the other stuff, I don't really, my wife and my youngest son, he's 8. They eat the testicles, bull's testicles, they cut them and fry them like little pancakes. And that's fine with them. I'm not interested in that, but whatever, and my other 2 kids, they love, we make burger patties and stuff like that. But yeah, when it comes down to it, we don't indulge in, too much, organ meats. We just have it as we fancy. Kidneys, I think that they taste like urine. So why would I want to eat them? Even cooked, or, why you wouldn't put it in water, you wouldn't do that in nature. So why would you do it now? It's like, why would you go and do something that isn't, it doesn't make any sense to me. So if they smell off, they don't feel good, then why force yourself to eat them just because they are nutritious? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
And again, proportionality is just not there. And, you look at the Native Americans, what they would eat traditionally, they would eat fresh meat when they had it. But, by and
yeah,
large, especially like the Plains Indians, they would run like a herd of buffalo over a cliff or something like that, and they would all crash and die, and they would go down and harvest the bodies. So that meat's going to go bad, isn't it? But it's able to be preserved and dried, and they would make pemmican. They would dry the meat.
oh, I love pemmican.
Yeah, it's so good. It's great. I've made it as well. It's fantastic. And so and they would grind that up and powder it, and then mix that with rendered fat 50-50, real
Yeah,
easy recipe. And there was a lot of accounts that they were saying that they actually preferred that. They actually preferred the pemmican to just the lean beef, the lean sort of meat, probably because of the fat content, because it just tasted nicer because of the fat. And so a lot of people, preferred that. They preferred the pemmican, and that's what they would eat most of the year. They didn't necessarily really eat the organs or whatever. The organs, would rot. You can't store these things.
right.
The Inuits, and the Native Americans in the northern sort of reaches, and in other parts of the world in the north, they would just eat the muscle meat and the blubber and the fat, and they would feed the organs to their dogs. And that's something that's well described and documented with the various polar explorers that have gone north. Other hunting sort of, I guess you call them traditions or techniques and styles, is that when someone would be out on a hunt, several days out, they would go and they hit something, catch it, shoot a deer or something like that. They would cut off its haunches, and they would gut it, skin it, and they would take back the forequarters and the torso, and they would leave the organs. Because you got to think about bang for your buck. You're going to hike this back, 20, 30 miles. You're not just going to bring dead weight. And so they would skin it and then leave the haunches up. And you think about this, this was described to me as a kid as this was they're offering to the animal spirits and so forth, and I'm sure that's what it was. But also just think about it, that's the leanest part of the animal, is its hindquarters. And so they're leaving the leanest part, they're taking the fattiest part, and they're leaving the innards and so forth. So there's a lot of these different examples, and you look at lions in the wild, they'll take down a buffalo, and they'll go for the abdomen first, and people think, oh, they're going for the organs. Yeah, they are eating the organs, but that's also the fattiest part. That's also where most of the fat is. That's bacon, is the abdominal abdominal wall. So they're going for the fattiest part first, and they're getting the organs too, and that's fine. But one of the things they do leave is they leave the hindquarters. Lions tend to leave the hindquarters. A lot of meat there. Why aren't they eating that? Well, there's not much fat in it. But the hyenas will come in as scavengers, and they'll sort of eat the haunches, and they'll be able. Their jaws are strong enough they can crack the bones, the femurs, and get at the marrow, and that's really what they're going for. They're again going for this fat as well. So it's just interesting. You can see a lot of these different examples, and people will say, well, people would hunt, and animals in the wild are very lean, but you will look at animals in the wild and they will tend to go for the fattier parts. And previous primitive humans living naturally generally go for the fattier parts.
Yeah.
And avoid
Absolutely.
organs. Yeah.
So I've got I've got one more thing that I really want to ask about, which is really controversial. In fact, I've got two things I want to ask, but I'll do the first one is, what's your take on like a raw carnivore diet? Because I've eaten raw meat before, and I like my steak as rare as possible, but I like it to be like at a good temperature. So I'll take it out for the day. If I know I'm having steak for dinner, I'll leave it out to get to a good room temperature, and then I'll just sear it. Just done. That's all I need. That's all I want. I want that flavor. And so there's like two perspectives of things. It's like I want I want it cooked a little bit because I like it, but also a lot of people say, which I'm a little bit in agreement, but also disagree, is when you cook, you kill all the nutrients and all of the goodness out of the meat. The longer you cook it, like I do agree that when you cook things like English style barbecues and they're burnt on the outside, frozen on the inside, I do agree that that's not good for you. But I don't think it's, that bad for you to eat. And there's a lot of people at the moment that are doing this whole raw carnivore thing. I know it's only YouTube, but there's a guy on YouTube that is fully says you should eat a raw carnivore diet, or he says you should eat this. That's the natural way. What's your take on raw meat, like in general, all animals?
Yeah. Well, if we're talking about natural and nature and going back, the earliest fossil record of like a cook fire, like a large fire for cooking, is 790,000 years old. Okay. So that's 500,000 years before Homo sapiens existed. So we've been cooking for a long time. So I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I don't think that you're going to lose out. Maybe if you just burn it to a crisp and you're going to do something, but as long as you're not an animal and just really just destroying this poor animal, it's already died for you. You don't need to punish it more. Like just enjoy it. I don't think you're going to run into any problems. If that were such a detriment to health, we probably wouldn't have done it. It probably wouldn't have come up, or we wouldn't have survived. It wouldn't have worked, but it did, and we do, and we've been cooking for since time immemorial, literally since before Homo sapiens existed, for 500,000 years before that, and so we've been doing that, and that may have conferred. I think that it may have conferred a benefit, in fact, because it would kill parasites. You're cooking this stuff, it's going to kill parasites, wild animals, wild game, and so forth. I don't know what you do, but it's commonly taught that you should cook wild game well done, to get the parasites and so forth. Trichinosis does not exist in pigs in farms in America, but it does in bears. And so people hunt bears, they will get trichinosis. So most of the cases of trichinosis in America are from bears. They're eating bear meat, and then that's from undercooked bear meat. You can actually undercook pork in America, and I'm sure in England and other Western countries, stuff's been basically eradicated from the farm populations for I think 20 years in America. I'm not sure about where else, but I think that probably conferred an advantage, being able to cook things. So if it sapped all the nutrients to such a degree as to not being possible to maintain life and get the nutrients that we needed, that probably wouldn't have worked out. So I don't think there's a problem eating raw, as long as you trust the source and you're not toying with parasites and things like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think you have to cook it in order to unlock different things, but I don't think you have to eat it raw either. And I'm like you, the more I go with this, the more rare I like it. And so I really I generally just sear it as well. And I just really prefer that taste. The same thing, just sort of seared on the outside and still almost cold on the inside, like a blue steak. But I think you're fine either way. I think there's arguments for and against. You can denature some of the proteins, and that can actually help your body break them down and absorb them a little easier. But also on the other side of it, people say that, over like 92 degrees Fahrenheit, you start denaturing some of the enzymes that actually help break it down from the inside, right? So you have these lysozymes that are in cells, and when they break open, they start actually dissolving and breaking down and digesting the cell from the inside. And people say, oh, this is actually of benefit because it's helping break itself down, and that's probably true. But I think you're okay. Either way you do it, I think you just go for preference.
Yeah, I think I agree as well. Yeah. So then the last one, anyone listening from my side of things is going to be shocked about this because I very rarely admit this, but I have in my life been vegan for a month.
Yeah.
So I will explain. So when we were moving over to eating, like doing ourselves, like creating our own foods, making our own bread and stuff like that, there was a vegan movement being pushed in Germany. And we looked at a cookbook, and I think it was vegan for fit or vegan for life or something like that. And I went vegan for a month, and because I'm I worked as a chef or a cuisinier, cooking 1 night a week. I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. So I used to cook mainly paleo and keto, but I went vegan before I did so that I could try and get my head in the mindset of being a vegan, what they wanted to eat. It was the worst month of my life. I'm not even joking. It was the worst. I felt like crap after a week, and I didn't stop feeling like crap until a week or two after I carried on eating meat again. And what I want to know is, have you ever done anything as ridiculous or stupid in your life as going vegan for a month?
Geez, God, no, absolutely not.
You've never done it.
No, God. No, I think I remember, like I said this before, but I remember when I was a kid, all I wanted to eat was meat. And, it's a very natural instinct for kids to just want to eat meat, especially fatty meat. And I remember my sister, was talking about becoming a vegetarian, and that just really just didn't sit well with me. I'm like, what the hell is a vegetarian? I didn't know what it was, but it sounded way too close to vegetables for me to be happy about it. And I asked my mom, I was like, what the hell is a vegetarian? She said, well, that's someone who only wants to eat vegetables. And I was like, only wants to eat vegetables? And that just blew my mind. And I was like, well, then I'm a meatitarian because I only want to eat meat. And I tried to every single time I got to that table. Like, that's the only thing I wanted to eat. And it was just a sort of an anecdotal reference. My older brother really liked meat. I really liked meat. And we had to eat all the other crap by sufferance. But our youngest brother, he was a very picky eater, and he really liked white rice with tempura sauce. So that was really the only thing that my mom could get him to eat consistently. And he would eat other things at other times, but the mainstay of what that kid ate was white rice with tempura sauce, which is sugary soy sauce crap. And my brother's 6'4", I'm 6'3", my younger brother's 5'10". It was a big difference. And we all had straight teeth. We never had braces. He had to get braces. And my sister, who went vegetarian, had to get braces. And we know now from the literature, in the dental literature, that crooked teeth is not genetic, so, England, it's actually not, English teeth are bad genetically. It's just you're not getting enough vitamin D because you live in, the tundra, and you're not eating enough fatty meat and so forth. So you're not getting vitamin K2, K1, D3, and calcium to the extent that you need to grow your jaws and teeth appropriately. Exactly. And so, it all comes back, and you see this in real time. But yeah, so, yeah, I've never gone that far. And but I have noticed that, when I cut out just the vegetables, just the spinach, kale, and broccoli, I noticed that it took a good 10 days to 2 weeks before my body was really humming, and if I mix in some, or if I don't mix it in, but if some rice or beans or something like that gets mixed in with the food I'm eating, if I'm at a restaurant, which is very rare at these days because I just asked them, just don't put on the sides. But I went to this Mexican restaurant, early on, and asked them to not bring out, all the sides. I just wanted the meat, but of course they brought it out, and it was like on top of it. I'm like, crap. And I was like trying to scrape it off, but I got like a bit of rice and a bit of beans. I remember thinking, I was like, maybe we should just have a spoonful, of this stuff and just see what happens. But I was like,
the worst that can happen is going through your mind, isn't it? What's the worst that can happen?
Well, it wasn't even that. It was just, it was purely in the spirit of experiment. I wanted to see,
Yeah.
what is this going to do to me? Is this going to make me feel like crap? And I remember thinking, like, I don't want to go down that. It's a slippery slope. If I sort of make an excuse to do it now, I'm going to make it later on. So I'm just going to, stay strong. But it was a little bit of rice, a little bit of beans on these sorts of things that I didn't quite get completely off. I couldn't scrape it all off. My back killed me. I was just like, I was like an 80-year-old who'd just been in an accident. Like it was like stabbing pain in my lower back for 4 full days. Did not go. And that's from the tiniest amount of beans and rice. But looking back, my back has always hurt since I was 15 years old. My back has always hurt. My lower back has just killed me. And then when I went carnivore in my early 20s, all of a sudden I didn't have back pain. I remember going down to San Diego when I was 27, and I was playing down in the Super League down there, and training with like the U.S. national team down in the Chula Vista Olympic Training Center, and then unfortunately had some knee issues, and so I couldn't actually compete for a spot on the World Cup in 2007 World Cup, which was quite devastating. But in any case, I remember at that point I had sort of slipped off just eating meat without realizing it. And I remember all of a sudden thinking, I'm like, God, man, my back's starting to be sore. Like, that's weird. And all of a sudden I went like, no, that's weird that it hasn't hurt. Like, well, Christ, my back hasn't hurt in years. Like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was started hurting again and started building up. So, this stuff, causes a problem. And, we think of this, we just think of this as normal. We have this baseline level of crap that we always feel because we're taking in all these toxins and so forth. And we think of that as normal. And so we gauge each day based on, this being normal. And then when you get out of it and you get all this stuff out of your system, you just feel so amazing. And you realize what normal actually feels like. And it feels like you're on drugs or something like that, because you're so much better all the time than you ever were before. And so, it's, if people haven't tried it, I mean, I highly encourage people to do it, and just do it for a month. I mean, you can do anything for a month. Kev went vegan for a month and that was miserable, and this is actually going to be good for you and you feel great. Yeah. So, I encourage people to try that and just see how you go.
Yeah, I do agree. And when going back to the teeth thing as well, I think it's so funny. When I left the army, which is about 8 years ago, just gone 8 years, and I had my dental appointment, and she was checking in my teeth, and she said, "You've got a hole in your tooth." And I was like, "Really? Oh, that's interesting," because I get checked every year. All of a sudden, in the army, you got to get checked every year. So all of a sudden, you get a hole after a year, because we were on bad nutrition back in those days anyway, in my army days. And she said, "We can fill it now." And I was like, I don't think I want another fill in. Like, I've already got 2. I don't want one. And she said, "But it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then your tooth is going to fall off and rot in your jaw and your head or whatever." And I was like, "No, you know what? I don't want it." And she said, "It will cost you more money when you get out of the army if it gets worse." And I said, "No, I don't want it. I've still got that hole. It's got, I think it's got smaller. Now I could be wrong, but it hasn't got bigger. That's for sure. Yeah. It doesn't smell. I make sure that there's no food getting stuck in it. So when I clean my teeth anyway, I'll give it a good, make sure there's nothing in there. And so I've tested it. Does my breath smell? To my wife, no, it doesn't. And this hole is still there. How can the hole still be there if all of those years that I was eating bad food, even if, because I go between keto and carnivore all the time. I flit between the two. I do a few months here carnivore, and then I go on to keto, eat a little bit of cucumber and bacon and stuff, and then back to carnivore. But it's always back to carnivore. It's always going back to it because it's the best. And how is my tooth not rotting away when I'm eating, just these things that I was, because I'm not eating all the grains, the sugar, all the seed oils and things like that. So how is it possible? And I say to my kids as well, look at his tooth, because my son ended up with holes in his teeth, and I said, "Look, man, come on, you got more holes than I have and you're 15. Do you want to you want to do it through nutrition, or do you want to have a load of metal in your mouth that's probably full of toxins anyway, or that is full of toxins?" And he was like, "Oh, no, I want to do it the way that you've done it." And now he pretty much only eats meat now. He's pretty much dead on carnivore. He still has that sweet tooth, and I think that it's hard for him as a 15-year-old boy at school. But he's getting more and more. He goes to the gym now as well. Soon he'll be deadlifting more than me, but he's going to sort his teeth out. And when you say about teeth and calcium and vitamin D, K2 and K1, you know, especially these things as well that you can't get from plants like K2, you know, that's like you're screaming out to me when people say they're going vegan. And then, you know, and when you said about the British teeth, I always remember the Simpsons episode, The Big Book of British Smiles, and it had all these really bad teeth in it. I'll never forget that as well. My wife teases me about that all the time because I've got completely straight teeth as well. I did have a brace, but it was just because one was a little bit more forward. It wasn't like so crooked and anything like that. But it's just funny that you bring up all of these things and then you look back and you think, and they're all food related, all of them, all nutrition related. You're not getting enough nutrients. You know, your teeth aren't growing properly because they grow, and you know, they have to grow. Everything grows on your body. So it's just sings the same tunes that I've been saying for the past 4 or 5 years now, even more. 8 years now.
Yeah, was it Monty Python that did the whole song about British teeth, British teeth, and they had the whole thing about why they're great. And at the very end, the last refrain was, you know, 3 cheers for the brown, gray, and black. And I always love that. And yeah, so you know, you're exactly right. I mean, you know, when you think about it, you know, we have, you know, certain gut, you know, certain bacterial flora that lives in our body and on us. In our mouth and our entire alimentary tract, you know, well, most of it anyway, but from end to end, you have bacteria in some areas, and your mouth is no different. And depending on what you eat, you're going to have different bacterial complement. And some of those bacteria are going to be problematic for your teeth, and they're going to rot your teeth, and they're going to start eating the enamel. And when you get away from that, you don't have that. I mean, you know, how many animals in the wild have cavities? How many of them have crooked teeth? I point this out to people. How many horses have you seen with crooked ass teeth? You know, how many dolphins? You know, the only things that have crooked teeth are humans and our pets when we feed them something that they did not evolve on. And so, and this is what it is, you know. And so, you know, wolves don't have crooked teeth, but a lot of dogs do, and it's not genetic. So, you know, when you stopped eating that certain thing, you had a different gut flora or a different bacterial complement in your mouth, and they stop wasting away. You know, that makes perfect sense. You know, if this is your hypothesis that, you know, eating meat and, you know, keto, but, you know, really meat is going to give you a better bacterial complement in your mouth, and you're not going to get teeth rot. As you know, the animals in the wild, they have to have their teeth their whole life. You run out of teeth, you run out of life. And so that doesn't really work. And so they're not just going to just rot out of your head. I mean, you know, what lion and shark has a dentist? You know, you know, and how many Inuits are going to the dentist up in the North Pole? Not many, you know. So, you know, they have to take care of themselves, is what I'm saying. And so, you know, that's a very good illustration of that phenomenon, where you started eating something biologically appropriate, and you got, you know, the appropriate bacteria in your mouth, and it, you know, was proper for your teeth. This is going to be the same thing in your gut with your gut bacteria. And everyone says, oh, well, you get better gut bacteria if you're eating more fiber, you need more this, you need more that. No,
I listen to that.
Not necessarily. Well, because the thing is they're comparing this to a Western diet. So it's always compared to what, you know, as any you know, economist, one of an economist, most economists' favorite, you know, saying is, compared to what? What are you comparing this to? There's a famous joke about, you know, an economist walking down the street, and his friend stops him and says, oh, hello, how, you know, good to see you. You know, how's your wife doing? And he said, compared to what? You know, and that's just, it's just such a commonly used phrase in economics, and it's something we should use certainly in medicine. You know, we have a study that says, oh, look, your gut bacteria is better if you're on a vegan diet. Compared to what? When you're eating a bunch of sugar and processed crap? Maybe. I wouldn't doubt that for a second. But compared to a carnivore diet, you know, no one's done that study. So first of all, you can't comment on it. But second of all, you know, so you can't use studies to glean any information off of that, because we don't have any. But if you look at, you know, nature and, you know, how we evolved, and, you know, what we eat in the wild and what animals eat in the wild, you can glean, you know, information off from that. If we're biologically adapted to eating a certain way, it stands that, you know, that you'll have a healthier gut complement when eating that way, because that's how we evolved. We evolved to deal with these microbes in our gut, and that's what's beneficial for us. And so you get that out of whack, and you get your health out of whack in other ways as well. And so it stands to reason that if you are eating what you're supposed to be eating, then your gut flora is going to be what it's supposed to be. And I
Exactly.
guarantee, I will bet any amount of money that, when we look at this more, that, carnivore gut bacteria is going to be absolutely the best compared to anything, because that's what we are. That's who we are.
Awesome. Yeah, I have had a great time chatting, and
Yeah,
I'm really happy that we got together and we've done this. And
yeah.
I don't know, I don't really have anything else. I could sit here and talk for hours and hours and hours. We're definitely singing off the same song sheet, but
Yeah.
all I'm saying is I'm really happy that, I want to give a shout out to Razzie, because she pushed us together,
Yeah.
to the girl from my group. And she's texting me now. She's like, "Are you doing it? Are you talking
Yeah.
to him?" But yeah, so that was awesome. And
Yeah.
what I'd love to do again is maybe in a few months or something, to maybe do another one, and we can have a little bit of a chat more. Otherwise, we'll end up speaking for about 4, 5, 6 hours or something like
Yeah,
that.
man. Sounds good. Yeah, it definitely sounds good, man. No, it was a pleasure. And, I think that, while we are singing off the same song sheet, I think it's good because, whenever you have these conversations, you sort of look at things in slightly different ways, and you get a little bit of
Yeah.
a bit more information out from different perspectives. And I think that can help people because, maybe, someone listened to similar information in another video, or someone else was talking about, or maybe, you or I were talking about, but maybe it just didn't resonate. And then you just say it in a certain way and people just go, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I've said things a few years ago, and then my wife's very much into this as well. She's an engineer, but she's very clever. She actually did 1 year studying medicine, but it wasn't for her, and then she moved on to engineering. And she's very clever. She's the one that pushed me into paleo, into carnivore, and into these things. And she's raw carnivore, so it's all come from her. And she's very knowledgeable, just like me. And sometimes we've seen things, like scrolling through whatever, or it's been on the TV, and she said, "Oh, that's really interesting." I'm like, "I said that to you a few years ago." I said that to you a few years ago. And she was like, "Oh, did you?" And it's always good to get another person that's got pretty much similar views as you, because like you've just said, that information gets across better. And then you can look at it and go, "Oh yeah, I didn't know that," from a different perspective. So I can't thank you enough for having a chat with me today.
Yeah, man. It was absolutely my pleasure. It's good talking to you.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
Yep. See you later.